This lecture is all about words connected to health. And here are the 7 words: therapy, transplant, immune, vaccine, antibiotic, dose, remedy. So the first word is therapy. Therapy. The treatment of someone with a physical problem or a mental illness without drugs or surgery is often called therapy. So this man is in desperate need of therapy, but he really needs somebody to talk to, perhaps. Not drugs. So therapy is involving improving somebody's health without drugs. Many people in therapy begin to remember what happened to them in childhood. Speech problems can often be solved by a speech therapy program. After breaking her leg, she needed several weeks of therapy to rebuild her muscles. And we often talk about being in therapy, or undergo therapy, or receive therapy, or need therapy. Therapist is somebody who gives the therapy. And therapeutic is the adjective. So therapeutic treatment treats an illness or a physical problem. And some synonyms for therapy: treatment, cure, remedy, and counselling. Counselling is when you talk to somebody. Transplant. Transplant. So a transplant is a medical operation, surgery basically, in which part of a person's body is replaced because it's diseased or damaged. It can be a verb or a noun, and as with a lot of words which can be both nouns and verbs, we stress the first syllable in a noun and the second in a verb. So the noun is transplant. So a heart transplant. But with a verb, it's transplant. So the doctor transplants hearts. And here you can see the prefix trans, which means across. So to transplant is to move something where it's already planted from one place to another place. And in health it means moving it from one person to another person. So heart transplants are very common nowadays. Hundreds of people are awaiting liver transplant operations. There was a scandal over the sale of human organs for transplant. So you can have a heart transplant, an organ transplant. You undergo a transplant and you can receive a transplant. Of course, the plural is transplants, transplanting, for the verb transplanted, and transplantation is the process. Some synonyms then: replace, move, graft, specially used with skin, and transfer. Your next word is immune. Immune. If you are immune to a disease, you can't be affected by it. You have immunity. And nowadays we often get immunity from a disease by being given a vaccine. Some example sentences: the blood test will show whether you are immune to the disease. Most adults are immune to rubella. After living in the war zone for a year, he became immune to the sight of death. So the third sentence just means not affected by the sight of death. So it's a more general sense of immune. We often talk about the immune system, immune response. You can be immune from a disease and immune to a disease. And often you use the word immunity, which is a noun. So you have immunity to a disease if you are immune to it. And immunization is the process of giving people immunity through vaccination. So some synonyms for immune: unaffected is a general sense of the word. Resistant, so you're resistant to disease. Safe from. And exempt is also a fairly general use of the word. So now let's look at vaccine. A vaccine. So a vaccine is a substance containing a very weak or harmless form of the germ that causes a particular disease. And if you give the vaccine to people, usually by injecting it into the body, it prevents them from getting that disease. And here is a woman being vaccinated against a disease. Anti-malarial vaccines are now undergoing trials. 7 million doses of vaccine are given to British children every year. Elderly people are often given a vaccine against flu. So we use give a vaccine, inject a vaccine, a new vaccine, and vaccine against. So a vaccine against measles, a vaccine against a disease. So vaccine. Note the pronunciation of vaccine. The two C's in the middle. The first C is the K sound. The second C is the S sound. Vaccine. Vaccine. And you can have vaccines. And vaccination is the process of giving a vaccine. And to vaccinate is the verb form. You vaccinate somebody. No synonyms for vaccine really, as it's quite a specialised word, so let's move on to antibiotic. Antibiotic. An antibiotic is a drug, a medical drug used to kill bacteria that causes diseases and infections. So here are some antibiotics in the picture, usually in the form of pills or liquid. And you'll see here bio in the centre. Anti-bio, so it kind of means anti-life in the sense of life as a bacteria. Bacteria is a form of life. So an antibiotic is something that acts against living bacteria that causes a disease. For example, approximately 60% of antibiotics are used to treat respiratory infections. A 10-day course of oral antibiotics is the usual treatment for tonsillitis. Antibiotic resistance is a growing problem that threatens the entire globe. And some common collocations: prescribe an antibiotic, administer antibiotic. You can have a powerful antibiotic and a course of antibiotics. So there's the plural, antibiotics. And some synonyms: drug, medicine. And here's the next word, dose. Dose. So a dose of medicine, or a dose of a drug, is a measured amount of the drug which should be taken at one time. So here in the picture, each cup contains one dose of a mixture of drugs. So I think the patient here has got a lot of diseases to get rid of. The recommended dose for patients is 300 milligrams. You can have a dose of something, a recommended dose, a high dose, a low dose. and you can have doses of something, and dosage. And some synonyms for dose: shot, measure, measurement, quantity, and amount. And the next word, remedy. Remedy. A remedy is a successful way of dealing with a problem, including a disease. So here we have a herbal remedy. So for example, natural herbal remedies often help overcome winter infections. There are many over-the-counter remedies for the common cold. The remedy of our economic ills lies in the hands of the government. So you can have a remedy for something. A remedy for pain, for example. A natural remedy. A cough remedy. And you can have a remedy of something as well. So remedy, the plural of remedy is remedies, of course. And some synonyms for remedy: medicine, drug, antidote, panacea. A panacea cures everything. It's a wonderful thing. And a fix. And relief, for example, pain relief. So there are your 7 words: therapy, transplant, immune, vaccine, antibiotic, dose, and remedy.
In this lecture, we're going to look at 7 words connected with treatment. Treatment of different illnesses, different diseases. And the 7 words are clinic, cure, drug, injection, medicine, patient, and scan. The next word is clinic. Clinic. So a clinic is somewhere where you go for treatment. It's usually smaller than a hospital. So the doctor gave me a medical checkup at the local clinic. The fertility clinic was set up for women in surrounding villages. You should attend the clinic at least once every week. So clinics is the plural, of course, and a clinician is someone who works at a clinic, usually a doctor, sometimes a nurse. And so you can attend a clinic, and a clinic offers certain types of treatment. Usually clinics don't offer specialized treatment like in a hospital, and they usually don't offer surgery either. So they're usually very small hospitals, or very specialized as well, like a fertility clinic and a health clinic. So some synonyms: health centre and medical centre are the best synonyms here. Hospital, as I said before, is usually a larger version of a clinic. So clinic. So the next word is cure. Cure. And a cure for an illness is a treatment, maybe a drug that stops the illness, that ends the illness. So it's a noun. It can also be used as a verb. So if doctors or a treatment cures an illness, then they cause it to disappear. Here is a noun form. He is carrying out research into finding a cure for cancer. And here's a verb form. The disease cannot be cured, but it can be controlled. And this is another noun form. There is no known cure for dengue fever. So for the verb, cures, so he cures, it cures, curing, cured. And some collocations, you can be cured of. So this is a verb form. Here's another verb form. You cure a disease. And here are some noun forms. A cure for. So a cure for diabetes, a cure for cancer. And you can find a cure. And some synonyms. You treat and you heal. These are verbs. And the following ones are nouns. Treatment, healing, healing, drug, and remedy. So there you are. There's your word cure. Here's your next word then, and it's the word drug. Drug. A drug is a chemical which is given to people in order to treat or prevent an illness or a disease. So for example, the drug will help thousands of people affected by this disease. Drug companies make billions of dollars in profit. The doctor prescribed the drug for me. So you prescribe a drug. A doctor prescribes a drug. You can also administer a drug when you take it, and take a drug. I mean, very similar things. And you need to test a drug before it's sold to the public. Here are some more collocations. So a drug treats something. It treats an illness. A drug causes things. So sometimes a drug causes side effects. Drug testing. Drug company. Drug company. Some synonyms for drug. Medicine is the most common one. Medication. Remedy. And pill. Now these are all synonyms when you're talking about drugs as a medical drug for treating a disease. But also the word drug can mean like bad drugs, illegal drugs, drugs that give you a high, illegal drugs that make you feel good but that you shouldn't take. Stimulants, for example. So there's narcotic and stimulant. So these are synonyms for when the drug is illegal. So there you are, drug. Injection is the next word. Injection. If you have an injection, a doctor or nurse puts medicine into your body using usually a needle or a syringe. And you can see the syringe in the picture. The doctor gave me an injection to help me sleep. You require an injection to get rid of the disease. It has to be given by injection twice a day. So, injection comes from the verb inject. So, as its verb injects, injecting, injected. And some common collocations for injection. You take an injection, you receive an injection, you administer, or the doctor administers an injection, and you take a drug by injection, by injection. So injection. Here's your next word then, and it's medicine. Medicine. Medicine is something given to an ill person, a sick person, by a doctor to help them get better. And it's also the generic name for a medical career. You work in medicine, Here are some example sentences. After school, she will pursue a career in medicine. I prefer to use alternative medicine. So alternative medicine. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So here's medicines is the plural of medicine, of course. And medicinal is an adjective, medicinal. So you might take, whiskey for medicinal purposes. And some collocations, we talk about alternative medicine. This is when you're maybe using herbs instead of industrially made drugs. Complementary medicine, herbal medicine, conventional medicine, so that's traditional, normal, hospital-based medicine. People practice medicine, so doctors practice medicine. And you can study medicine. So some synonyms: drugs, medication, antibiotic. So all these three relate to medicine as a cure for a treatment. The next two relate to medicine as a practice. So when you work in medicine, so you work in healthcare, you have a medical career. So medicine. Patient is your next word. Patient. So a patient is a person who is receiving medical treatment from a doctor or in a hospital, or someone who is simply registered with a doctor. And some example sentences: if treatment is given early, the patient's chances are much better. Dr. Smith specializes in the treatment of cancer patients. The surgery accidentally deleted all the patient records. And some common collocations: a patient has an illness, a doctor treats a patient receives treatment. We talk about patient records and also patient care. And some synonyms for patient: sometimes talk about a case as well, medical case. An invalid. An invalid is often somebody who can't move properly. Sick person. Inpatient. Now, an inpatient is a patient who stays in a hospital overnight while receiving care in order to be monitored or treated, whereas an outpatient is somebody who leaves the hospital straight after receiving treatment. They don't stay in hospital overnight. So patient. And the next word is scan. Scan. A scan is a medical test in which a machine sees into the body. So, for example, to check the health of an organ. It's also a verb. So in this picture, a doctor has scanned a patient. Here are some example sentences. He was rushed to hospital for a brain scan. A scan revealed a fracture to his spine. A CT scan is a painless imaging test that uses X-rays. So scan, scans is the verb, scanning, scanned. And we use the scanner to do a scan. Some collocations. We have a brain scan, a body scan, a CT scan, and a scan reveals things. Some synonyms: X-ray and examine or examination. So when you have a scan, you have an examination. When a doctor scans you, the doctor examines you. So there you are, scan. So there are your 7 words for treatment: clinic, cure, drug, injection, medicine, patient, scan. And so it's over to you. So do the practice quiz and complete the vocabulary record.
So in this lecture, I'm going to take you through 7 words connected with healthcare. And here are your 7 words: immunise, pathology, pharmaceutical, physiotherapy, practitioner, psychiatry, and anaesthetic. So your first word is immunise. Immunise. If people or animals are immunised, they are protected from a disease, from a particular disease. So they are made immune to the disease. They can't get the disease. And doctors immunise people, usually with an injection into the arm, into the bloodstream, sometimes though through the mouth. So for example, we require that every student is immunised against hepatitis. The monkeys had been immunised with a vaccine. All parents should have their children immunised. A very good idea. Stops disease from spreading. So we immunise against things. You can immunise against flu. You immunise a child or a student. We'd often talk about flu immunisation or a disease, a particular disease immunisation like flu. And it's a verb, immunise, so you can have immunises, immunising, immunised, and the noun form is immunisation. Immunisation. So immunise, immunisation. So some synonyms for immunise. Not too many actually. Inoculate, vaccinate. Protect is a more general term for immunise. Here's your next word, pathology. Pathology. Pathology is the study of the way diseases and illnesses develop. So here you have a doctor in this picture trying to work out the pathology of a disease by analysing some blood. Here are some example sentences. Anatomy, physiology and pathology are studied on medical courses. A sample was sent to a pathology laboratory for analysis, maybe a sample of blood. The physician reviewed the pathology of selected disease processes. Some common collocations with pathology: forensic pathology, social pathology, molecular pathology, and you do pathology often in a pathology laboratory. Pathology is a noun. You can have somebody that does pathology is a pathologist. Pathologist, pathologist. And here's your next word, pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical. So pharmaceutical, it means something connected with the production of medicine, often the industrial scale production of medicine. We talk about the pharmaceutical industry. And pharmaceutical companies, they often manufacture pills. So for example, Roche are a Swiss pharmaceutical company, one of the biggest in the world apparently. The pharmaceutical industry is the second largest in the world. The firm has supplied pharmaceuticals to Africa for many years. So we talk often about the pharmaceutical industry or a pharmaceutical company, and they make a pharmaceutical product. And we also talk about a pharmaceutical firm. And some synonyms for pharmaceutical: drugs,
medicine as well. Pharmaceutical. Now here's your next word, physiotherapy. Physiotherapy. So the physiotherapy is the medical treatment for problems that affect the joints, such as the elbow, the knee, or the muscles or the nerves of the body. And it often involves exercises with your body, stretching, or having your body massaged in some way, or moved, or even warmed in some way. This is somebody having a massage, which is a very basic form of physiotherapy. So for example, you can say after his leg heals, he will need several weeks of intensive physiotherapy. An alternative is to visit a physiotherapy clinic. If you experience joint pain, you can undergo a course of physiotherapy. So we often talk about you undergo therapy. That's a very common collocation. You can receive physiotherapy. You need physiotherapy. For example, if your joints hurt or your muscles hurt. And you can go to a physiotherapy clinic. And the person who will give you your physiotherapy is a physiotherapist. Physiotherapist. And here's your next word, practitioner. Practitioner. Doctors are often referred to as practitioners or medical practitioners, and they practice medicine. So here's a medical practitioner hard at work. And some example sentences for practitioner. If in doubt, consult a medical practitioner. To become a qualified practitioner takes several years. If you feel chest pain, visit a medical practitioner immediately. You might be having a heart attack. Some common collocations is a general practitioner, or also known as a GP, is a qualified doctor, often in the UK. A medical practitioner has the same meaning as well. You can consult a practitioner. So if you're not feeling well, you can ask a practitioner questions. You consult a practitioner. And you can also visit a practitioner. So some synonyms for practitioner. Of course, the obvious one, doctor, or consultant, or specialist. Here's a type of specialism as psychiatry. And this is a branch of medicine concerned with the treatment of mental illness. So here you have a psychiatrist with a very sad or depressed patient who needs psychiatry. So psychiatry is a relatively new profession in medicine. She is a consultant in child and adolescent psychiatry. He practices psychiatry at the local hospital. So you can study psychiatry, teach psychiatry, practice psychiatry. And one field of psychiatry is child psychiatry. An adjective for psychiatry is psychiatric. So you often have a psychiatric department in a hospital. And the doctor that carries out psychiatry is a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist. Here's your next word. Anesthetic. Anesthetic. And an anesthetic is a substance that doctors use to stop you feeling pain during an operation. It can be to make your whole body stop feeling pain, or just a particular part of your body. So for example, if you go to a dentist, you might have an anesthetic in your mouth, but here in this picture, the anesthetic is being given to you as a gas, and this will put you to sleep, so you won't feel anything in an operation. So anaesthetic. And the spelling is a little bit tricky, but in American English, often we drop the second A. Here's the British English spelling, Anaes, but often it's spelt like this, especially in American English. So some example sentences. The operation is carried out under general anaesthetic. 73% of women had an epidural anaesthetic during labour, so they didn't feel pain. And the dentist will usually give you a local anaesthetic during dental surgery. So you can have a general anaesthetic, which takes the pain away from your whole body, or a local anaesthetic, which takes the pain away from a particular part of your body, such as the mouth at the dentist. And you go under anaesthetic when the doctor gives you an anaesthetic. And the doctor administers an anaesthetic. So anaesthetic. There is a verb for anaesthetic. Anaesthetic is a noun, and the verb is anaesthetize. Anaesthetize. And the person who gives an anaesthetic is an anaesthetist. Anaesthetist. So some synonyms for anaesthetic. Painkiller. Gas, if the gas, of course, kills pain. Soporific, makes you go to sleep or makes you very drowsy or sleepy, a soporific. And the doctor will often give you a shot to make you feel no pain as well. So there you are, anaesthetic. So there again are your 7 healthcare words: immunise, pathology, pharmaceutical, physiotherapy, practitioner, psychiatry, and anaesthetic.
In this lecture, we're going to look at some words connected with health and well-being. Here are the 7 words: blood pressure, cognitive, pharmacology, intake, mental, posture, and recover.
The next word or phrase really is blood pressure. Blood pressure. And blood pressure is the amount of force with which blood flows around your body. And you can see the person in the picture is measuring their blood pressure with the pad around their arm. The nurse will monitor your blood pressure. The drugs will help to lower your blood pressure. Her blood pressure has dropped dramatically in the last hour. So she's very, very ill. Some common collocations, some very precise language here as well. Diastolic blood pressure. So blood pressure is measured using 2 numbers. There's diastolic and there's systolic blood pressure. And the first number, you are usually given a blood pressure with 2 numbers. The first number is systolic. That measures the pressure in your blood vessels when your heart beats. And the second number, the diastolic blood pressure, measures the pressure in your blood vessels when your heart rests between beats. You can have high blood pressure and also raised blood pressure, which is very similar to high blood pressure. And the opposite is low blood pressure. And in between, normal blood pressure. And you check blood pressure. You check someone's blood pressure, or you can take blood pressure. You can take someone's blood pressure. No synonyms. It's a very precise phrase there. So blood pressure. The next word is cognitive. Cognitive. And cognitive relates to the mental processes involved in knowing things, in learning things, understanding things. So the man in the picture is playing chess, and you need very good cognitive skills to play chess. As children get older, their cognitive skills become stronger. This man is Lev Vygotsky, a famous Russian psychologist, and Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development has been very influential. Some people with depression can benefit from cognitive therapy. So cognitive is an adjective, and the adverb is cognitively. Cognitively. And there is also a noun form, cognition. Cognition. So cognitive, cognition. Some common collocations: cognitive development, cognitive therapy, cognitive skills, and cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. This is the mental stress you feel, or that a person feels, when they have one belief but they're faced with a contradictory belief. Some synonyms for cognitive: mental, intellectual, and thinking. So there you are, cognitive. Here's your next word then, and it's pharmacology. Pharmacology, which is the branch of science related to drugs and medicines. And it's made up of two parts: pharma, which is short for pharmaceutical, as in pharmaceutical drugs or medicines, and at the end, ology, which means it's a suffix meaning the study of, as in biology or geology. Here are some example sentences. He studied pharmacology at London for 3 years. He was recently appointed Professor of Clinical Pharmacology. And here is pharmacology, but turned into an adjective, pharmacological. So pharmacological treatment of mental disease is often long-term. You often need to take drugs for a long time if you have mental disease. So here's the adjective again, pharmacological. And somebody who works in this field is a pharmacologist. Pharmacologist. Here are some common collocations: clinical pharmacology, molecular pharmacology, and you can study pharmacology as well. There are no real synonyms because it's a very precise word. Pharmacology. The next word is intake. Intake. So your intake of something, so food, water, medicine, is the amount that you take in, that you consume of that thing. So how much you eat, how much you drink. Take in, basically. Intake means take in. So your intake of alcohol should not exceed 2 units per day. You must reduce your sugar intake. We will have a fresh intake of students next week. And it's a noun, so you can say intakes, but it's very rarely used. Some common collocations: an intake of something, an intake of sugar, for example. You can cut the intake or reduce the intake of something. And doctors often talk about restrict the intake, restricting the intake of sugar, for example. A daily intake is a common collocation. Your recommended intake, an alcohol intake, an intake of alcohol. So you can use intake in these two different ways: alcohol intake, intake of alcohol. And some synonyms: consumption is a common synonym for intake, or simply take in. There you are then, intake. The next word is mental. Mental. And mental means things relating to thought processes, to thinking. But it also relates to the state or health of a person's mind, what we call mental health, for example, depression. This man has poor mental health, he's depressed. Some examples. Children undergo rapid mental development in the first few years of life. After returning from war, he developed severe mental health problems. She underwent a lot of mental anguish after the death of her mother. So mental is an adjective, and the adverb form is mentally. Mentally. And some common collocations. Mental illness. So mental here is an adjective. You can be mentally ill, so mentally is an adverb here, the adjective is illness. Mental development. Mental anguish. And some synonyms for mental. The first three relate to thought processes, so intellectual, thought, cerebral. Cerebral is to do with the brain, using the brain. The next two are related to mental health, so psychiatric or mad. Now it depends on the context. Mad is a very informal way of talking about somebody with mental health problems. There's also the word psychotic. However, we don't talk about a psychotic illness. We talk about a psychotic disorder. So the collocation is important here. So it's mental illness, but psychotic disorder. So there you are, mental. Okay, let's look at this woman. She's running along. She's upright. She has a very good posture when she's running. Posture. So posture is the position in which you stand or sit, or in this case, run. She had good posture, but in this picture, you have a woman with bad posture. She's leaning forward, her spine hurts. And it's to do with position or pose. Some example sentences. You can make your stomach seem flatter by improving your posture. You must maintain good posture when you run. And this is a diagram, the position of skeleton in good and in poor posture. So good posture on the left, poor posture on the right. So we talk about good posture and bad posture, correct posture, and you should adopt a posture. So you take on a good posture or a bad posture. Synonyms include position, stance, and pose. There you are, posture. Here's the next word then. Recover. Recover. So when you get an illness or an injury, you often get better afterwards. So you recover. You get back to full health. So the woman in the picture, maybe she has the flu. She's trying to recover. Some examples then. He is recovering from surgery. So the dog went into surgery. He's got some stitches. Has to wear this neck collar. A mother is recovering quickly in hospital after a car crash. He never fully recovered from the virus. So recover is a verb, so recovers, recovering, recovered. Recovery is the noun form. Recovery. Some common collocations. You recover from something, to recover from something. A patient recovers. Now, recovering can also be used as an adjective, so you can be a recovering addict. And you can be fully recovered. Some synonyms for recover include recuperate, heal, bounce back. Now, bounce back is an informal phrase. You bounce back from an illness. Rebound. Convalesce is something that you often do in hospital. And mend. There's a common phrase we use in British English, on the mend. So when you are recovering, in the process of recovering, you are on the mend. So there's your word, recover.
Here are your 7 words and phrase. Again, blood pressure, cognitive, pharmacology, intake, mental, posture, recover. And as always, don't forget to do the practice quiz and download, print out and complete the vocabulary record. So in this lecture we're going to look at 7 words connected to illness. Here are the 7 words: acute, chronic, addict, allergy, syndrome, epidemic, trauma. And the first word is acute. Acute. An acute illness is one that becomes severe, becomes very bad, very quickly, but it usually doesn't last a long time. So this man has an acute headache. She was admitted to hospital with acute arthritis. After drinking contaminated water, he developed an acute case of dysentery. She was rushed to hospital after feeling acute chest pains. So you can have acute pain, acute symptoms, acute illness, acute infection. And some synonyms for acute: severe, intense, sudden and sharp. And acute is often contrasted with chronic. Chronic. So a chronic illness or a disability lasts for a long time, often years. So, for example, he's suffering from chronic back pain. So it's been going on for years. He can't get rid of the back pain. She suffered for years with chronic depression. The condition is often chronic. So you can have chronic pain, chronic stress, a chronic disorder, and chronic illness. So chronic. You can have an adverb from chronic, chronically. So chronic is an adjective, chronically is the adverb. And some synonyms for chronic: constant and continual, incurable, it can't be cured, persistent, protracted, sustained. The next word is addict. Addict. So an addict is someone who does harmful things but can't stop doing them, such as a drug addict or a nicotine addict, a cigarette addict. They can't stop taking these things. And they're bad for them as well. So the research is designed to find out why drug addicts often relapse. He was both an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. They were both recovering addicts and supported each other. So you can have a drug addict, heroin addict. You become addicted. And you can be a former addict. So addicts is the plural. And addicted. So you are addicted to something. Addicted to. And you have an addiction. Addiction. So that's the noun. Your next word is allergy. Allergy. So if you have a particular allergy, you get ill when you eat or smell or touch something. And these are things that don't normally make people sick or ill. So for example, this lady has an allergy. She's sneezing, maybe because of she touched some flowers or ate something, or maybe because of grass, the seeds in grass. For example, food allergies can result in a wide variety of symptoms. An allergy to cats is a common cause of asthma. It is important to protect infants against allergies. So you have an allergy to something. You can develop an allergy, a severe allergy, and an allergic reaction, such as sneezing or having a rash on your skin. So the plural of allergy is allergies, and the adjective is allergic. Allergic. So allergy, allergic. So allergy. Some synonyms: sensitivity, hypersensitivity, that's very high sensitivity, reaction, and aversion, aversion. Your next word is syndrome. Syndrome. A syndrome is a medical condition that is characterized by a particular group of signs and symptoms. So, for example, irritable bowel syndrome affects more women than men. The syndrome is more likely to affect those with lower levels of immunity. And the exact cause of Asperger's syndrome is not known. You can cause a syndrome, acquire a syndrome. You can suffer from a syndrome, diagnose a syndrome. And some synonyms for syndrome: ailment, disorder, malady, sickness, problem. Epidemic. Epidemic. If there is an epidemic of a particular disease, it affects a very large number of people, usually in a particular region or a country. So here's a picture of a flu epidemic from 1918 when millions of people died. This was an epidemic. In fact, it was more than that, which we'll look at that later. Epidemic. A severe flu epidemic is sweeping through Moscow. A killer epidemic of yellow fever is affecting Central Africa. A report warns that the AIDS epidemic is not yet at its peak. So you can have an epidemic of something. A flu epidemic. A deadly epidemic. An epidemic sweeps through a country, sweeps through a region. So epidemic is a widespread disease, a plague. And the last one, a pandemic. Actually, a pandemic is an epidemic that affects huge areas, vast areas, maybe the entire world. So the 1918 flu epidemic I mentioned just now was a pandemic because it was over the entire world. Trauma. Trauma. A trauma is a serious injury caused by an accident rather than an illness. I'm going to show you a horrible picture. Oh no! This person has a traumatic injury, a nail. Oh dear, let's move on. Some examples of trauma. Horse riding accidents often involve head trauma. An ambulance is vital for getting trauma patients to hospital quickly. Because of the car accident, she suffered severe neck and head trauma. So you can have a severe trauma, head trauma, a trauma patient and a trauma surgeon. And some synonyms for trauma: injury, wound, blow, damage, shock. These are all types of trauma, words for trauma. So there are your 7 illness words: acute, chronic, addict, allergy, syndrome, epidemic, trauma.
Next, we're going to look at 7 words connected with disease. Disease. And here are the 7 words: depression, disorder, donate, fatal, infect, overweight, obese. The next word is depression. Depression. This is a mental state in which you are very, very sad and feel that you cannot enjoy life at all. You feel your life is difficult and unpleasant, and you often feel that you can't make things better either. So you're stuck in depression. She was suffering from depression is an example of the word. You should receive professional care if you have severe depression. She suffered from postnatal depression for months. Postnatal is after birth, after the birth of a baby. Often women can be depressed. So you suffer from depression, and you can treat depression. Doctors treat depression. You can have severe depression when it's really bad, and clinical depression. Some synonyms: despair. When you're really sad, when you're depressed, you despair. Sadness, melancholy, despondency, distress, and unhappiness. So depression. The next word is disorder. Disorder, which is a problem or illness which affects someone's mind or their body. When something's not working properly, they have a disorder. It's the opposite of order. Disorder. So, for example, he suffered from a rare blood disorder. The disorder can cause paralysis. He developed a severe mental disorder. And of course, you can have a plural disorders and some common collocations: a mental disorder, a psychiatric disorder. Somebody suffers from a disorder, and a doctor can treat a disorder. Some synonyms include illness, complaint, affliction, or ailment, and malady. Sickness as well is another synonym. But remember that a disorder is a precise word that relates to when something doesn't work properly. So disorder. The next word we're going to look at is donate. Donate. If you donate something, such as your blood or an organ in your body, you allow doctors to use it to help someone who is ill, who needs your organ or your blood. Here are some example sentences. Many people donate their organs for use after death. You can donate your sperm anonymously. And here is an adjective form. All donated blood is screened for HIV. And so some forms of the word. It's a verb, so donates and donating, donated, which can also be used as an adjective, so donated blood, donated kidney. And this is a noun, so someone who donates something is a donor. Donor. And you give a donation. A donation. Some common collocations for donate, so you donate blood, you can donate organs or donate a kidney, and you can also give an anonymous donation, so people don't know who gave the donation. Some synonyms for donate: give or give away, provide, and you can also bequeath something. Bequeath. So donate. The next word is fatal. Fatal. And something that is fatal results in a death, such as a fatal accident or a fatal disease. The word fatal comes from the word fate, which is something that you cannot avoid. So it's your fate to have something done to you, such as death. It's your fate, fatal. Some example sentences. The doctor said he had suffered a fatal heart attack. The overdose of pills had proved fatal. Global warming could be fatal for the human race. If nothing is done to stop it, the human race can die out. So fatal is an adjective. Fatally is an adverb, so you could be fatally wounded. Fatality is a noun which means death, somebody who has died. So we talk about a car crash resulted in 7 fatalities. Some common collocations: fatal accident, fatal shooting, potentially fatal. Something can prove fatal. And some common synonyms for fatal include deadly, lethal. When it's a disease, incurable. So a fatal disease is often an incurable disease. Mortal and terminal. We often talk about a terminal disease because it's going to kill you. Fatal. The next word is infect. Infect. So if an animal or a human or a plant is infected, it gets an illness or a disease like the teddy bear in the picture. Some example sentences. A single mosquito can infect a large number of people. Objects used by an infected person must be sterilized. People infected with Ebola must be kept in isolation. Ebola is a very dangerous infection. It's a verb, so infects, infecting, infected, which can also be used as an adjective, an infected person. Infectious, you can have as well. Infectious is an adjective, an infectious disease. And some common collocations: you infect with something. You infect people. You often infect people with something. You can infect animals. And we often talk about a viral infection. And some synonyms: contagious, virulent. That suggests it's a very powerful. It infects lots of people. It's very dangerous if it's virulent. Poisonous, toxic, communicable. So we talk about a communicable disease. And pestilential is more of an old-fashioned word, as if it's the disease is coming from God, if it's pestilential. So infect. Overweight is the next word. Overweight. And someone who is overweight weighs more than is considered healthy. So overweight, of course. So that's weighing more than is proper, more than is healthy. So being moderately overweight increases your chances of heart disease. If you eat too much sugar, you will become overweight. Overweight people are often thought to be lazy. And some common collocations, we talk about an overweight person. You can be slightly overweight, just a little bit. Moderately overweight, so in the middle, and grossly overweight, when you are very overweight. Some common collocations, the most common one being fat. But if you are very overweight, grossly overweight, you can be described as obese. Slightly old-fashioned word is corpulent. Plump also is similar to fat. And also sometimes people talk about people being pudgy when they're plump. Sometimes also people talk about being big-boned. So there you are, overweight. The next word is obese. Obese. So if someone is obese, they are extremely fat, very fat. Some example sentences. Obese people tend to have higher blood pressure than lean people. So lean means kind of a normal body shape. More than 300 million people globally were considered obese in 2000, in the year 2000. The likelihood of developing obesity may at least be in part hereditary. So obesity here is the noun form for obese. So obese is an adjective. Obesity is the noun form. We often talk about an obese person. You can also be clinically obese. Morbidly obese, that's when you're very obese. This is a medical term. And you become obese. So obese means very fat. And also corpulent is a slightly old-fashioned word. And overweight. So there you are, obese.
So there are the 7 words again: depression, disorder, donate, fatal, infect, overweight, obese. So next, do the practice quiz and you can complete the vocabulary record as well.
In this lecture, we're going to look at 7 words connected with the human anatomy. Anatomy. And this is all to do with different parts of the body. And your 7 words are brain, bone, breathe, muscle, heart, sight, organ. The next word is bone. Bone. And your bones are the hard parts inside your body, and together they form your skeleton. Note the pronunciation of bone. It rhymes with own. It doesn't rhyme with one, so it's not bon, it's bone. Some example sentences. I fractured a bone in my arm when I fell off my horse. The body is made up of bone, fat, and muscle. Osteoporosis happens when not enough new bone grows. Osteoporosis often affects elderly people. So, of course, the plural is bones. You can have an adjective form as well, which is bony. Bony. So that means you have bones that can easily be seen. So you have prominent bones. They stick out as opposed to muscular. So thin people are often seen as bony because you can see their bones sticking out. Some common collocations, a broken bone and fractured bone. There's no actual difference between a broken bone and a fractured bone, but fracture is the clinical, the medical term for a break in a bone. And a fracture can range in severity from a small crack, known as a hairline fracture, to a compound fracture, which is when the bone punctures the skin. But a fractured bone is the clinical term. Thigh bone you can have, of course, and collarbone, so different bones of the body. And some synonyms. No real precise synonyms. You can talk about the bony parts of the body. Or you could talk about, when you're talking about the entire body, the skeleton. So bone. So let's look at the word brain. Brain. And this is the organ inside your head that controls your body's actions and also enables you to think and to feel things. And the development of a child's brain happens very quickly. His father died of a brain tumour. A brain tumour. And the brain contains a number of different lobes. In the picture you can see some of the lobes of the brain. So, of course, the plural of brain is brains. We can also use an adjective, brainy. So if someone is very clever, we say that they are brainy. You've got a big brain. And some common collocations. You can have brain damage, a brain tumour. This is to do with cancer. Talk about the human brain. Or, of course, you can talk about any animal's brain, a cat's brain. We talk about part of the brain as well. So part of the brain affects emotions. And some common synonyms. Mind. Mind is really just the thinking part of the brain, the cognitive side of the brain. Sometimes we talk about grey matter. It's a kind of slang term for the brain. And the cerebrum is the largest part of the human brain. So there you are, brain. The next word is breathe. Breathe. And the woman in the picture is taking in the fresh sea air. She is breathing in the fresh air from the sea. So breathe. The final E changes the word from breath to breathe. So without an E, it's breath. With an E, it's breathe. Breath, breathe. And some sentences. He held his breath underwater for several minutes. I can't breathe because of the air pollution. You should try to breathe through your nose. So breathe is the verb form and breath is the noun form. You take a breath. Breathe. And of course, breathes is these are the verb forms. Breathing, breathed. Breather is another noun. You can be a heavy breather at night if you're asleep. If you make a lot of noise, if you snore, you're a heavy breather. You can also take a breather. That means take a rest. And this is the noun form, the plural of the noun form, breaths. It's exactly the same as the same spelling as breathes. So he breathes is the verb form, but breaths is the plural noun form. Same spelling, different pronunciation. Some common collocations, you breathe in and you breathe out. You breathe through things, so you breathe through your nose or your mouth. You can breathe deeply and you can breathe easily. Some synonyms, inhale and exhale are two fairly close synonyms. Inhale is to breathe in, exhale to breathe out. Respire is often what plants do. Sniff is slightly different to breathe. Sniff is when you breathe in a smell or a scent, like in a flower. You sniff the smell, you sniff the flower. So there you are, breathe. The next word is heart. Heart. And the heart is the organ in your chest that pumps blood around your body. Some example sentences. The athlete's heart was beating fast by the end of the race. The pain in his chest was a sign of a heart attack. The heart transplant operation was a great success. And of course, the plural of heart is hearts. And some common collocations for heart. The heart beats. Now, when the heart beats strongly, loudly, the heart pounds. Suggests also a little bit of speed. You can have heart disease, and you can have a heart transplant. Now, it's a very precise word, so not any real synonyms, possibly cardiac organ or vascular organ. One very informal word for heart is ticker. Sometimes people say in native British English, you've got a dicky ticker, which means that your heart isn't working properly. So there you are, heart. The next word is muscle. Muscle. And a muscle is tissue in your body which connects two bones and which you use when making movements. The muscle contracts when you use it and it relaxes when you don't use it. Note the spelling. There is a silent C letter in muscle. And don't confuse it with these mussels. Mussels are a type of delicious shellfish, and the pronunciation is exactly the same as muscles. So let's look at some example sentences. The Incredible Hulk has enormous muscles. To get strong muscles, you must do lots of resistance training in the gym. He tore his calf muscle while he was walking and is in lots of pain. And some different forms for the word. So muscles is the plural, of course. Now, muscled is an adjective, not all that common, but it's an adjective which means that you have lots of muscles. You have a well-muscled body. But the normal adjective that we use is muscular. Muscular. So muscle, muscular. Muscle can also be used sometimes as a verb. So, for example, to muscle in means you push in, you jump the queue, you try to get on the bus before everyone else, so you muscle into the queue. So muscling, I'm muscling into the queue. Here is the verb form, in fact, to muscle in. When you're using muscle as a noun, you can tear a muscle or pull a muscle. Different parts of the body. When you go to the gym, you build muscle, and different parts of the body have names like this: the calf muscle, thigh muscles. Muscle is a very precise word. There's no synonyms. The next word is organ. Organ. And an organ is a part of your body that has a particular purpose or job. So, for example, the heart, the liver, the brain. Here's some example sentences. The virus damaged her muscles and internal organs. The lungs are one of the 5 vital organs in humans. A balanced diet is essential for proper functioning of your organs. Of course, the plural is organs. Some common collocations are vital organs. We often talk about internal organs, so organs inside your body. And if one of your organs goes wrong, you can have an organ transplant. You can also donate an organ to somebody else. Now, organ is a very precise word, so these words aren't synonyms, but they are examples of human organs. So the heart, the brain, the kidneys, the liver, lungs, and finally the largest organ in the body is skin. Organ. Sight is the next word. Sight. And sight is the ability of someone to see something. So humans have sight as one of our senses. We also use this word when talking about a famous sight, so a place that you go to see. And the spelling of that word is the same. So the Eiffel Tower is a famous sight in Paris. There is another word which is pronounced exactly the same, but spelt differently, sight. And people often confuse this with the site, the famous site like the Eiffel Tower. But this word it means a particular place, a building site, for example, or the site of a battle. But we're going to look at sight when it's to do with eyes, of course. So some example sentences. My sight is failing, so I need to wear glasses. Owls have a powerful sense of sight. goalball is a sport for blind and partially sighted people. So sighted is the adjective form of sight. So here we are, sighted. Some common collocations. You can lose your sight if you either go blind or your sight gets worse, you lose your sight. But you can have good sight, bad sight. You can be partially sighted and poor sight as well. Poor sight, bad sight. Some synonyms for sight. Vision. Perception, possibly. Perception is also to do with thought as well as sight. And we often talk about eyesight. There you go, so sight. So here again are your 7 words connected with anatomy. Brain, bone, breathe, muscle, heart, sight, organ. Coming up next is the practice quiz for these words, and if you go to the resources section you can download and complete the vocabulary record. In this lecture we're going to look at 7 words connected with medical science. Medical science. So here are the 7 words: bacteria, cell, germ, hereditary, toxic, trial, and virus. Let's look at the word bacteria. Bacteria. So bacteria are very small organisms. Some bacteria can cause disease, but some are necessary for the body. So you can have good bacteria. Let's look at some example sentences. Chlorine is added to swimming pools to kill bacteria. The bacteria of most diseases are in the air around us every day. Yogurt contains good bacteria that is essential in effective digestion. So let's look at some forms now for the word. Now bacteria is actually a plural noun. You have 2 bacteria, 3 bacteria, and the singular is bacterium. So 1 bacterium. And the adjective form of the word is bacterial. Bacterial. Let's look at some common collocations now. So bacteria multiplies. Bacteria spreads. You can have harmful bacteria. And you can have a bacterial infection. Some synonyms for bacteria. Well, you can have germs, microbes, and very similar to microbes, microorganisms. So there you are, bacteria. And the next word is cell. Cell. And a cell is the smallest part of an animal or a plant that is able to function on its own, to function independently. And every animal or plant is made up of billions of cells. And the cells divide and produce many other different types of cell. So the cells divide and produce many other different types of cell. Soap destroys the cell walls of bacteria. And all cells are bounded by a cell membrane. So in this picture, the membrane is the outermost part of the cell. So of course the plural is cells. And some common collocations. We talk about a stem cell, a cancerous cell, the cell wall, And when a cell gives out something, a liquid, a fluid perhaps, or a gas, a cell secretes. It's a very precise word, so there are no precise synonyms for the word cell. The next word is germ. Germ. And a germ is a very small organism that causes disease. It's not a precise medical term, though. It's a term that's used in general English, not in medical English so much. And there are four main types of germ. There's the virus, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. So germ is quite a general term. So some example sentences. Chlorine is widely used to kill germs. The virulent germ affected millions of people. A virulent germ. That means it's a virus, but it also spread very widely too. Germs in contaminated water can spread quickly. So germ, we normally refer to a germ in the plural, germs. And some collocations. So germs spread, germs infect something, germs attack something. But also something kills germs, so chlorine kills germs. Some synonyms, infection, disease, and another word that's used in common, everyday, general language is bug. So you catch a bug, you pick up a bug if you get infected by a germ. So there you are, germ. The next word is hereditary. Hereditary. And a hereditary characteristic or a hereditary illness is something that's passed on from generation to generation, from a parent to a child before it's born. So in the picture there's a baby, and if the mother had a hereditary disease, then the baby may well get that disease as well. So it's things that are passed on through the generations. So for example, albinism, which is when you are white, you don't have any colour. So albinism is a hereditary trait. So this lion lacks the normal colouring of a lion. In men, hair loss is hereditary. Hair from the top of your head anyway. And around 200 hereditary traits are transmitted from generation to generation. So hereditary traits are things like eye colour, for example, hair colour. So hereditary is an adjective. Now there is a noun form which is not very commonly used. It's heredity. So it's quite a rare form. It's not very often used. So we might come up with a sentence like, heredity is not a factor in causing the disease. Some common collocations now. So we can talk about a hereditary disease, or a hereditary trait or characteristic, and a hereditary factor. And some synonyms: genetic, inherited, inborn. So there's the word hereditary. The next word is toxic. Toxic. And a toxic substance is poisonous. It's very bad for you, and it will probably kill you as well because it's toxic, it's poisonous. Here are some example sentences for you. The cost of cleaning up the toxic waste will be very expensive. This product is highly toxic to cats but harmless to humans. Claire Patterson fought for the removal of lead, which is a highly toxic substance from gas. And some common collocations, something can be toxic to something else. It can be highly toxic. We talk about a toxic substance and toxic waste as well. And some synonyms: poisonous, dangerous, harmful, deadly. And a word that's very similar to deadly but a very nice, powerful word is lethal. So strong poisons are lethal. They will kill you. So there you are for toxic. Your next word is trial. Trial. And in a medical sense, a trial is an experiment in which you test something to see how well it works. It is usually done over a certain extended period of time, maybe a few months or even a few years for some things. And the word comes from the verb try. Try, so trial. Some example sentences then. They have been testing this drug in clinical trials. The new CT scanner has been on trial for the last week. The new medicine has been undergoing a trial, so undergoing testing. Some forms for the word, of course, trials is the plural of that, and some common collocations. Something can be on trial, to be on trial, so a drug is on trial. We often talk about a clinical trial, and you undertake a trial. So scientists undertake a trial, and the drug itself can undergo a trial, or the new medical treatment can undergo a trial. Some synonyms for trial: test, experiment, investigation, examination, analysis. So there you are, trial. So here's your next word, and it's virus. Virus. And a virus is a kind of germ that can cause a disease. Diseases like the common cold, for example, or the flu. So there are many different strains of the flu virus. And a virus can spread rapidly in confined places. You can spread a virus by coughing and sneezing, so you spread a virus. Some forms for the word: the plural is viruses, so one virus, two viruses, and the adjective form is viral, so you can have a viral infection. Some common collocations: you catch a virus, you can spread a virus if you give it to other people. You can have a deadly virus. The flu is not usually a deadly virus. A deadly virus is one that can kill, and the flu virus. And some synonyms for virus: disease, infection, germ. Remember, though, a virus is a very precise word, so disease, infection, germ are not exact synonyms. There's also the word pathogen. Pathogen, and a pathogen is a microscopic organism, and it often causes illnesses, usually very bad illnesses. So there you are, virus. So those are your words for medical science: bacteria, cell, germ, hereditary, toxic, trial, and virus. And here's your homework. Don't forget to do the practice quiz and also the vocabulary record.